Speaking of bringing people in, let's bring in Aditi, who was on the sideline for Sunday's, whatever you want to call that.
Antonio Brown, I hate him too.
Aditi, we're talking about Steelers
that we hate.
You can say,
go
ahead.
Who's the top 5 Steelers you hate?
I just got off the phone. Can I call you back?
Yo, go ahead.
Just Sorry, guys.
Tell them
we're doing top 5.
Kevin Stefanski was on her other phone. In case.
My phone conversation.
Let me ask you a question.
And I didn't hear Mikey say he was coming to me.
Was that Kevin Stefanski on the phone trying to decide if they should run out of bounds or take a knee?
Okay.
For the smartest guy in the room, he's got to get a clue.
Adam.
Yeah.
Adam.
Yeah.
You're up 2 touchdowns with 2 minutes to go. You really thinking that you're going to cough up that lead?
Of course not, but it doesn't matter. If they're the smartest team and analytics is what they do, they should know that if you take a knee, the game's over. 100%. Just because
I don't even think. Look, we saw this a year ago.
That's his job to think that, Aditi.
Mayfield told Nick Chubb to do it, and Nick Chubb runs out at the 1 yard line, and gamblers everywhere are devastated.
Who cares about gamblers? F those people.
All of that. I just don't even think that entered their mind. It was such a slugfest. I mean, when I tell you that game, it just, the first week came down to a 58-yard field goal, which was kind of crazy because the Browns had dominated that game. That's not at all what this game was. It's like there was not a moment to kind of sit and breathe easy in any way. This was, you heard Joe Flacco tell me after the game that it was just like all game long, every single snap was a battle in some ways. I think that to sit here and scapegoat Nick Chubb is just absurd and ridiculous. That's not what
I'm not blaming Nick Chubb. I'm blaming Stefanski.
This is not scapegoating.
Obviously, listen, it's mostly on the defense. The defense was disgusting. They were embarrassing. They were horrible in this entire game, not just at the end, particularly horrible at the end. But, yes, Kevin Stefanski, he's the head coach. He needs to know if we get a first down, we take a knee, we win the game. I know it's unusual. I know teams don't do it, but let's be ahead of the curve and be smart. Nick Chubb did it a couple of years ago in a game, and it was smart.
Okay, I mean, it's a point. It's fair. But you know what I'm really curious about that I still haven't gotten an answer on? What was the snap on the PAT and what was the hold? Not the snap, but the hold. What was the hold on the PAT? For as money as Cade York is, how does he miss that extra point?
Aditi, I was going to ask you that.
Was there a piece of the operation that didn't go well?
So I was going to ask you that because that was a big piece of the game that got lost in the overall picture.
Yes. Yeah.
From my view, which was the television camera, to me, there was someone that came in almost unblocked from the left side, which would be the camera left or TV left. And to me, it looked like he was going to block that kick if Cade York split the uprights. So Cade, and I don't know, I was hoping somebody had asked him after the game. It looked to me like, and he would be intimately aware of him because he can see him coming. It looked to me like he went for the right upright to kick it on a trajectory where the guy coming in clean wouldn't have an opportunity to block the kick. That's just my take. I'm wondering what anybody else saw and if that was even discussed after the game. Because it looked like
the angle that I had, obviously, because I was on the sideline, I didn't see that piece of it. I didn't see a replay of it, the way the game went, and it was so fast. I do know that, as you know, in the booth is Jay Feely, who's the expert of all things kicking and special teams related. And he had told us before week 1 that there's some very interesting statistics about Bojorquez as the holder for kickers before he was their holder and after he was their holder. And that prompted me to very specifically ask Kevin Stefanski about the holding job that Bojorquez has done, just because Jay Feely brought that to my attention, that's just as much a part of missed kicks as anything. So I'm just saying that the fact that Cade York, who's as money as they come, missed a extra point, there's probably something more there too. And to the entire game, it's not just the miscommunication on the secondary. It's not just Kevin Stefanski thinking to tell his offense, hey, maybe we don't want to score here if you get down to the 1 yard line. It's not just it's a series of, what's that book?
Yes.
It's a series of unfortunate circumstances.
There is.
And at the end of the day, it's just never putting away a team that fought so hard.
I do think it's unfair to say he's as money as they come. It's only his second game in the NFL. I mean, he was great in college, but that doesn't matter. We think he's going to be his money, but you're right. It was in the end, it's an incredible 6 or 7 like insane plays that had to go against him for this to happen. But here's my general issue.
But that's what football is. Can I just interrupt for a second?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
exactly what football is. I mean, how many coaches have you heard say it's a fine line between winning and losing, or it comes down to 3 plays? You just never know which those 3 plays are. I mean, Mike Tomlin tried to do that this week, saying, oh, if Cam Sutton doesn't drop this interception, and if Gunnar Olszewski, or I don't even know if I'm saying his name right, sorry, if he doesn't muff that punt, if these 3 things don't happen, he's like, oh, we beat the Patriots. Okay, well, those 3 things happened and you didn't beat the Patriots. So what do you want to – I mean, that's what the game is.
But here's the thing. You're right, 100%. It's not college football. NFL games, they're mostly close, unless you're the Bills right now, or just the first 2 weeks are just killing everybody. That game was ridiculous yesterday. But anyway – my beef with Kevin Stefanski, and I have mostly been pro Kevin Stefanski, and I still am. I don't want him fired. I'm not being a lunatic, anything like that. But here's my problem with Kevin Stefanski right now as I look at his whole time here in Cleveland. Because, first of all, I'm not going to compare him to the coaches before him because he's had good talent here, and the coaches before him in Cleveland had no talent. So that's not fair to put him up on a pedestal because these other coaches had no talent. But my problem with Kevin Stefanski is so many games have either been lost late or have been made close late because it seems like they take their foot off the gas or they don't have that killer instinct. And when you look at, like, I like that Kevin, for the most part, that Kevin is kind of, he's chill. Right? He's not screaming and yelling any of that stuff. But if he's not going to do that, they need to have somebody that does. Because Myles Garrett is mild-mannered, and Anthony Walker is mild-mannered, and Denzel Ward is mild-mannered, and Nick Chubb is mild. Like, can I have one guy that's going to grab everybody by the face mask and say, straighten the bleep out here? We need to have one guy like
I have
that,
to tell you, actually, there was a penalty late, and I did see Kevin Stefanski actually lose his mind. I saw him get really angry, and I made him note of it. I should pull out my notebook. I actually wrote it down because I was like, oh, my God, like, that's emotion right there. That's anger.
Right.
I think that, you know what, you talk about putting your foot on the gas.
Yeah.
If you take out those 2 minutes, the offense did put its foot on the gas. Look at what the Browns did ultimately score at the end of the game. Look at what they did produce in that fourth quarter. So they weren't suddenly getting.
But the defense always lets up at the end.
Not to lose.
The Browns always suck I'm sorry, Aditi. The Browns always suck fourth quarter defense. Their fourth quarter defense stinks. It happened last
I mean, look, to me, this is just the most obvious stupid thing. I tweeted this yesterday, and it's funny because it's what Jesse Bates told me a year ago. Jesse Bates, of course, from the Bengals secondary, and the secondary was playing so well. And Jesse said, it's about communicating and over-communicating. And he openly said to me, he said, if you don't see us talking back there, we're in trouble. And this Brown secondary has spent the entire camp talking about how well they know each other. And even though Grant Delpit didn't start last year, he played so much. And these guys are on the same page. And they have such great chemistry. And they know each other so well. And blah, blah, blah. It's almost as if they took a little bit for granted when really it takes 3 seconds to say, okay, guys, this is what we're doing. Okay, guys, right? Like, just say it. Even if you think it's the most obvious thing, just say it and make sure. And I think that lesson has been learned. I also think it's interesting because, I asked Joe Flacco this. I asked him on Saturday. I said, after they gave up those 2 big pass plays, did you see something that you think they're vulnerable to, that they're susceptible to? Flacco just gave me kind of this smile. And then after the game, I said, hey, I asked you this. You smiled at me. And he said, yeah, we saw what we wanted to see.
I mean, to Joe Flacco, Joe Flacco!
Aditi, this Steelers team better than almost anybody, and that's a gift for us right now because we can just straight up ask you. They're dinged up. TJ Watt's out. They went from having 7 sacks in the first game to 0 sacks in the second game. First of all, how's that affecting the team? And secondly, how do you approach this Steelers team right now if you are the Browns? What are their weak spots? How do you attack them right out of the gate?
So make your points count, obviously. Make your drives count. I think starting the game and scoring and starting the game hot and keeping your foot on the gas and all of those same cliches, they matter because this offense, this Steelers offense, I don't know what to say about it other than it's been putrid. It's not establishing. It's not enforcing its will on anybody. It's not establishing the run game. They're not making any tough catches across the middle. They're only throwing outside. They're throwing short of the first down marker constantly. George Pickens, who may just be the best receiver in this entire draft class, hasn't even been used, has barely been targeted. Look at what another rookie, Garrett Wilson, just did in his second game, and it's as if the Steelers forgot that they have George Pickens on their roster. So
Awesome.
the Steelers haven't opened anything up yet, and I can tell you this, in Pittsburgh right now, people are screaming for offensive coordinator Matt Canada's head. And a year ago, we were moaning about this offense, and we thought that it was just the limitations of 38-year-old Ben Roethlisberger, who didn't have time to throw behind an awful offensive line and could only dump balls off. But now you've got Mitch Trubisky, who absolutely can move, who could get on the move, who can roll out, and he's still doing the same thing, throwing short of the first down marker. So
he's not any good.
This isn't a high-flying offense.
No.
So impose your will, and the defense just clean up that communication stuff.
So
I mean, I don't look. The Steelers didn't have a single sack this past weekend. I was on the radio in Pittsburgh yesterday, and I said in some ways that's almost more alarming. This is a team that has the highest paid defense in the NFL. This is a defense that has game breakers all over it. It's not just TJ Watt, it's Cam Hayward and Minkah Fitzpatrick, and they, feel so strongly about that being their calling card. And you don't sack Mac Jones once? You don't sack an offense that Greg Bedard went on. Greg Bedard has covered the Patriots for 20 years. He went on the radio in Pittsburgh last week, and he said he has never seen a worse offense, a more inept offense in those 20 years of covering the Patriots than this one. And the Steelers couldn't get home even once. And I think also lost in all of this is that outside that final interception, Jacoby Brissett had a really good game.
Great game.
He spread the ball around well. Amari Cooper got going. Nobody could cover Amari Cooper, and that was the case week one too. But Amari Cooper's production week one was almost in drawing those penalties. He had 101 yards, 9 catches, looked so great. He and Brissett clearly on the same page. Nick Chubb doing Nick Chubb things, getting hotter just as the game goes on, and Kareem Hunt once again proving that he could be a starter, as Adam says, on just about 20, 25 teams in the NFL.
Yeah, there's no doubt. So,
I mean, this is an offense that did indeed play well and needs to continue doing what it's doing. And the defense needs to clean it. The defense talked a lot about how after finishing top 5 a year ago, the goal this year is to be a number 1 defense. And there's a lot of talk of the goal is to be a number 1 defense. And we think we have the pieces to do it. And we know each other so well. And we're all back in the system. Okay, we'll do the simple things.
Well,
the talk is good. Do the simple things. Communicate and over-communicate.
Let me tell you so that, and I agree with you. The Pittsburgh Steelers obviously have their woes, but it is of no concern of us over here because we have ours right now. And I will tell you that as a player, the one thing that counts in the locker room is this accountability, right? So when we get to the game, the clock management, that solely falls on the coaches. It does. Somebody has to manage the game, right? Period. Right. And then the other thing, when it doesn't happen, in this business, you have to hold people accountable. I asked Leroy that question. I did not get the answer I wanted. Who is holding people accountable over there? Right? Because if there's no accountability, then you can, by squinting your eyes, you think I did a hell of a job today. Yes, I did, when you sucked. Right? And then the problem here is that, Aditi, everybody here saw it. And then they went on the defensive rant yesterday that wasn't me. I didn't do it. Right?
Denzel Ward.
Everybody said that.
Myles
right?
Garrett blaming yelling at fans.
It's okay to have a bad day, right? But don't sit up here and tell me you didn't have a bad day when we all saw you did, right?
Yeah, but let me say a few things.
Who is holding that accountable?
Okay, let me say a few things here. One, this is classic frustration. This is this nonsense that you hear in a losing locker room. Okay, or in a locker room that has just lost. It's the same in Pittsburgh. You had people questioning what they're doing offensively. You had Mitch Trubisky and Deontay Johnson and, all this there was bickering in the huddle and et cetera. So this is classic, what you're seeing there. What I will say is there is indeed accountability in that building. Why did Perion Winfrey not get a hat? And why was Perion Winfrey not practicing? From what I believe to be true, or from what I've been told, it's really not a big deal at all. But that's what accountability looks like, because every little thing matters. So what's happening inside the building is not necessarily what's being seen publicly. And that's the third thing I'll say. One of the coolest parts of this job as a sideline reporter is that you really learn so much more than you ever knew before. part of that is the honesty that you get out of players and coaches in production meetings, things that they tell you to inform your broadcast so you don't say wrong things, and that you perhaps may not use, but that gives you context about a variety of things. And part of that is actually standing behind the bench during the game and actually seeing what a coach says to a player or what a player says to a player. Now, some of that you can't ever report, you can't ever publicly say. But 2 games into this role, the feeling that I have is, my goodness, there is so much you don't know as an outside reporter. Like, you think you know, you think that you have your finger on the pulse of things, but holy cow, is there a lot that you don't actually know. So just because publicly, would I like to have seen Denzel Ward say something different yesterday? Yes, of course. Would I have liked Myles Garrett to say something differently? Of course. But just because that's what's being said outside doesn't necessarily mean that's what's happening inside the building, inside those meetings. And the other thing I would say is that it's very easy to point to somebody and say, this person shouldn't have done this. Jacoby Brissett shouldn't have spiked the ball at the end of the Panthers game like that. Okay, but there was something else that happened there that I'm not privy to tell you to explain why he was forced to do that. And even though Jacoby would have been the GOAT, had that GOAT, not as in greatest of all time, but the GOAT would have been the scapegoat.
Yeah.
Had that not gone the Browns' way, he completely was not at fault on that play.
You're right.
It's just the reality. We don't know everything.
That's very true, Aditi. And I think anybody that's covered the sport knows that there are situations that are completely, in reality, completely different than what the perception was, and even sometimes what the players will publicly acknowledge to the media. But here's a question that I have for you that I'm sure they're asking this question over in Berea today, trying to figure this out. In the preseason game against Philly, you had a world-class runner, sprinter, get behind the defense, and you're like, okay, it's preseason, it's not a big deal, right? Then in Carolina, we saw that happen on multiple occasions where there were clear breakdowns. You don't even have to be inside the locker room or know what the play call was. You just know something went wrong, whether it was a player or the wrong hand signal or whatever. There were missed coverages, particularly in the fourth quarter. This is their trademark now. It's happened in back-to-back games. They've allowed 17 points. And then again on Sunday, we saw it. Just inexplicable lapses in either judgment or communication or whatever. And then Denzel yesterday brought up the green sticker issue. Explain to fans what he was talking about, what's going on there, and are they perhaps going to change their process, because clearly this isn't a one-off. Once is a problem, or once can happen, twice is a problem, but 3 times is a trend. We're in the trend area. We're in the trend area. What's going on internally, either with the green sticker or with the hand signals? How are they fixing that in your view?
I don't know how, but I think they are fixing. That's the point. I think that all of this is being addressed right now, and good or bad, they have such a short turnaround. So there's not a lot of time to stew. There's only time to do. So obviously, to your point, I mean, I completely agree. There are issues that need to be addressed. It's not a one-off. It's not, okay, that was just one brain fart, let's let it go. It's now a trend. It is now an issue, and it is something that needs to be addressed.
We just saw
that this week.
We just saw that tweet.
Did
you see those numbers?
5 blown coverages.
5 blown coverages
200 yards,
for
more
over
than any
200
other
yards.
team.
The next closest team has 2 blown coverages for 79 yards. That's a 5-alarm blaze.
They have a problem.
That's not a spark.
Yeah, it's got to be fixed immediately.
And that's the reason that they lost on Sunday. Clearly, it's
fortunately
but
you know what?
It's not. That's not news to them. Joe Woods was very, very aware of that. And in fact, in our Friday meeting, he made a point of saying, look, against the Panthers, we only gave up 261 yards or whatever it is, 260 yards. And 200 of them, I think it was actually 202 of them, came on 5 plays. And then he said there were 2 pass plays that were 120 yards, so almost 121, something like that. Almost
but that's
half
like
of the
saying,
total
other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how did you like the play?
So he knew it. He was aware of it. But again, maybe just his players were, this is, you love to say that you learn from a win. The best place to learn is from a win. But sometimes you need to lose to learn, to actually get it in your head, to actually have it stick, to actually have it say, you know what, we can't take this for granted, or this is hubris, or whatever it is.
Right.
So, again, I mean, I think, look, this game Thursday, it's like when the ship isn't sailing right, what better than to face your rival? What better than to face a division foe? What better than to do it on the massive stage of Thursday night? And Amazon has turned it into an even bigger stage. You want to hear something crazy? Yeah. I was told that Amazon asked for 350 credentials. Jay Feely was telling me that the last time CBS had a Super Bowl, CBS was doing the Super Bowl and asked for 100 credentials. Wow. And supposedly Amazon, for this Thursday game, is credentialing 3 times that number. That's 4K? How big the Amazon TNF production is.
It's nuts. They did a great job. They did a great job. First one out of the box.
What'd you say?
What game you got real quick?
So I'm going to come on Thursday, and I will this week actually be in New England. I'm doing Ravens-Patriots, and that's pregame for CBS Sportsnet. I'm back on the sideline next week for Eagles-Jaguars. Jaguars-Eagles. Surprising Jaguars.
Should be a good game,
yeah. Doug Peterson goal.
Eagles look great last night.
Okay,
Aditi, thank you. Very, very great insight.
Thanks for having me, guys.
As always.
Thanks, Aditi.
All right.
See you next week.
Bye.